You're listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis, the only podcast focused on the biohealth capital region. Each episode, we'll talk to leaders in the industry to break down the biggest topics happening today in biohealth.
Hi, this is Rich Bendis, your host for BioTalk, also the CEO of BioHealth Innovation, trying to help our emerging scientists, researchers, and small businesses in the biohealth industry within the biohealth capital region. We have a very interesting guest today, a first-timer that we've never had on BioTalk before. I don't know why it's taken so long, but she will tell us that this will not be the last time on BioTalk. We're going to have frequent interactions based on everything she does for our region. And our guest today is Amritha Jaishankar, who is the Executive Director, Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund. And welcome to BioTalk.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. And I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're excited. Well, hopefully you'll be excited when we're done as well. But I think our listeners, first thing we always do is try to have you introduce yourself, because that's the best way for them to get to know you. So please give our listeners a little bit of your background, sort of education, how you sort of progressed to get to where you are today within this great stem cell research fund entity.
Great. Happy to. So thanks very much. As you said, I'm Amritha with the MSCRF, and I've been here since 2016. But, for my background, I'll go way back and start. It's been an interesting journey. I grew up in India, where I did a lot of my early schooling. And I think I've been interested in science for as long as I can remember. And my first degree was in zoology. So, looking back, it was one of the best ways to study development and stem cell biology. But obviously, that's not what I was thinking then at all. But I've always been interested in understanding the genetic basis of diseases and in gene therapy, although what it looked like then was very different from where we are now. But that took me to England, where, I worked like 6 different jobs, got a master's in genetics. And this was at the institute where they discovered DNA fingerprinting. So that was pretty exciting. And then I worked there for a little bit in, cancer lab, other labs, and then moved here for a PhD, which is when I first started working with stem cells. And it was an exciting time to be in the field, because that's when sort of the Nobel Prize winning find of induced pluripotent stem cells came on the scene. And so I was working with that. And that led me to NIH, National Institutes of Health, where I started my postdoctoral training in the stem cell neuroscience genetics area. And then this gave me the opportunity to be the founding member of a nonprofit institute that we built at Hopkins, where I worked with several industry partners to advance treatments for neurodevelopmental disorders. But this gave me the platform to make contributions beyond research and have a broader impact, more at the intersection of science and business, but also communications, business development, operations, strategy, and just, much broader. But at the end of the day, I was still really drawn to patient-oriented, mission-focused work. And so, this is what brought me in 2016 to MSCRF to spearhead an Accelerating Cures initiative. And I've been here since. So, yeah, I guess I've been in science my entire life, but specifically in the stem cell space since 2004, in Maryland since 2010. And yeah, somehow in a roundabout way, my training across various countries and my experience inside and outside of the lab has brought me here. And now I get to sit down with you and speak. So I'm happy, very happy to be here.
Well, I think that's a very interesting background, and also having that international experience in 3 different continents, I think is very beneficial to what you've done with your career. And then having the opportunity to work with, one of the leading academic institutions as well as NIH, you really had a very good background to prepare you for what you're doing today.
Yes, absolutely. And, it's been a fantastic experience. And, cell therapy really is a global industry. So I've definitely leveraged my connections in the industry across the globe to help us move some of these discoveries to the clinic.
And then when you mention NIH, you've probably read, as I have, that Dr. Collins is going to retire at the end of the year. So maybe you can attract him to actually get engaged doing something with you, because he'll need something to do next year.
That would be great, wouldn't it? There's one of the folks we fund who actually worked closely with him. So, we never know.
You never know what will happen. He might end up, if he's not with NIH, in one of the emerging companies within Maryland, which would be pretty exciting. So you keep referring to it as MSCRF, which is the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund, which is an easier way to refer to it. So I'll refer to it as MSCRF from now on. But let's introduce the listeners to the fund and basically tell a little bit about how it was formed, why it was formed, and we'll get into what it does today.
Yeah, so we were established through the Maryland Stem Cell Research Act of 2006. And the purpose was to promote state-funded stem cell research and cures through grants. So really 15 years now since we were created, although we started giving out grants first in 2007. And so our focus really is on identifying and fostering cutting-edge research and innovation in the field of regenerative medicine. Our mission is to develop new medical strategies for prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and cure of human diseases, injuries, and conditions through human stem cells. Or as I say, what we really do is to accelerate stem cell-based research, commercialization, and cures. And we do this through our various funding programs, but also by serving as the connective tissue for the regenerative medicine industry.
And then when you talk about the various programs, I think you have 6 different programs. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you talk a little bit about each of them briefly, about what's the difference between the different programs that you offer?
Yes, absolutely. So we offer 6 different programs, and they're sort of designed around what does it take to transition a promising regenerative medicine discovery from the lab where the invention occurred to the clinic where it can reach patients, as well as a mechanism to train those next generation of stem cell scientists and leaders. So briefly, our discovery program is for faculty at universities or research institutes based here in Maryland. And the purpose there is to encourage these high-risk, high-reward ideas, catalyze innovation and that next medical breakthrough. With the validation grant, where there's been some IP that's generated, and we're looking to sort of iron out the kinks before we know whether we can form a company or move it to a clinical trial. The commercialization grant is for startups or an established company developing a new stem cell product, again, based in Maryland. The clinical trials actually is open to any US-based company with a clinical trial site here in Maryland. So we fund this site to help bring these cutting-edge treatments here. And then we have the postdoctoral fellowship, which is really to train these next generation of leaders. These can be in academic or industry settings. And then recently, we also started the launch program, which is to bring new to the field folks into the stem cell space, because as this field is growing, there are emerging challenges that need new thought or orthogonal ideas or techniques to solve some of these problems. And so that was our goal there. So, these are the 6 at the moment, but, we're constantly engaged with the industry and always reevaluating where the gaps are. And actually, in the 5 years that I've been here, we've already changed these programs twice. So we're constantly addressing the gaps. And I would say, it largely falls under 3 pillars, what we do. So we foster research and innovation through these university-based grants where, we're really building those teams, helping shape the research and catalyze those ideas and inventions. With the validation, the commercialization, and the clinical trials, we're more about, building and creating these companies. And what we do here is create value through milestone-based payments and then, helping de-risk these technologies and just, advance the science and cures. And then the third thing, as I mentioned, we really serve as a resource and help these folks with whatever it is they need to be successful. So we're very hands-on, trying to identify each person's unique need and really creating a community around it.
One of the things you mentioned, Amritha, is that some or one of the programs you'll fund things outside of Maryland. And I know sometimes the assembly gets sensitive when we have Maryland money going out of the state, but I guess in a way there's a benefit for what you do to attract some of these people that you fund that may not be in Maryland. Could you explain that a little bit?
So the money never leaves the state.
Ah, good.
Yeah, so the company can be located somewhere, but they have a clinical trial site here that we fund. So really, we're almost bringing money here. So our clinical trials are one of the, hardest to get into because they require a match, they require an IND, right? So the companies are actually bringing money to Maryland because they're matching whatever we fund. They're bringing the expertise and like the knowledge and the cutting edge technologies to patients here. And so we actually benefit a lot from this, and the money never leaves the state. We take care of that.
Well, thanks for clarifying that for me, because now we can say all of the Maryland money stays here, and it actually helps attract other people's money to the state, which is very good. Excellent. One thing I wasn't going to ask, but I think it's important that the listeners hear, because when you hear the word stem cell, it really, has different connotations for different people throughout the United States. And I'm sure you have to encounter that a lot with people that you come in contact with. So how do you address just the basic concept of stem cell research that may be controversial in some areas or different regions of the country or different political groups or whatever that may stimulate some interesting conversation or dialogue around it?
Right. And, the field has really evolved, right? So I think I mentioned, so most of the controversy seems to be around the embryonic stem cells. But I think what people don't know is that we're doing so much work with these other type of stem cells as well, adult stem cells, and what I refer to as induced pluripotent stem cells, which essentially you can take a skin cell or, an adult cell and convert it into a stem cell, because that's how much we know to do now. And so I always say this honestly is the most powerful technology that exists. It's going to revolutionize healthcare. It already is, because it's the only way we can create a cure, not just a treatment, right? I think sometimes this doesn't come across, and it's not something we're used to. It's a one-time thing that creates a cure, right? Once we're successful. And so I think the way we really work with it is to explain what is actually being done and, where the cells come from, when they were made, whether we're making new ones. So, I'm always happy to have these conversations. I think the controversies are because sometimes people don't know. And, we work really hard. I have to say we have a very thorough peer review process. We have several regulations in place. We have the commission also oversees this. And so, we're very careful about what we fund and the work that we do.
When you talk about some of the things you funded, how about some of the more interesting or more successful things that you funded that actually have helped progress some clinical research or help get something closer to commercialization that would benefit patients in the world?
Yeah, so this is the most exciting part of the job. So we're focused on stem cell research and cell therapies, but we're disease agnostic. So the impact is really broad, right? So we're developing cures for rare diseases, but also for those more prevalent indications that are amongst the top 10 leading causes of death in Maryland and across the nation, including diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, stroke. Last year, we also funded some work addressing COVID-19 related ARDS as well. And so, we recently launched a YouTube channel also, so we can, hear directly from some of the folks I work with. But, some of the things we talk about there are how regenerative medicine approaches looking at skin is in clinical trials now and could potentially help about the 2 million or so amputees and wounded warriors across the country. We talk about how stem cell disease modeling is leading to potential treatments for Parkinson's, which is the second most common neurodegenerative disease that affects over 6 million people globally. We fund a lot of work in the cardiovascular space as well, and where stem cell and tissue engineering approaches are really being used to address issues of the heart or the blood vessels. Again, this impacts about 2,200 Americans each day that die of cardiovascular disease. We funded work to improve stem cell transplants that have impacted and saved the lives of children, adults, whether, it's SCID or primary immune deficiencies or aplastic anemia or sickle cell disease. And also these approaches have been applied to cancer as well. And some of the stem cell organoid-based disease modeling I was mentioning before are also used to understand COVID-19 now as well. So, there's a lot of exciting work that's happening. And you probably also know many of the companies we've supported, whether it's Rooster Bio or Maxite, who've really grown here in Maryland.
They just went public.
Yes.
On NASDAQ. That's exciting for Doug Dorfler and his team. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And we funded them even before this Accelerating Cures initiative. And Cartesian, you've spoken to them. We support one of their clinical trials. And then there's, LifeSprout, Vita Therapeutics, Theradaptive, Ceraxis. I mean, I think many of our companies, and we've helped create some of them. We've, supported some of them. And most of them have now raised follow-on funding between 6 and 40 million each, and they're growing now. So again, these are just some examples that come to my mind now, but there are several. So we've had a lot of success with our companies and faculty and clinical trials. But, I would say, yes, we create jobs and generate revenue for the state, but to me, the real impact is improving the quality of life and creating treatments and cures. And so, it's hard to put a value on the lives that we've been able to save. And, this also translates to reducing healthcare costs for the state. For example, let's say diabetes costs the state economy about $6 billion a year. Developing a treatment for it would potentially have a huge economic benefit. And that's just one, right? So last year we funded about 27 different disease indications. And so the potential impact is enormous. And with more investment, as we've seen with COVID this past year, the timeline to develop some of this is significantly accelerated.
Well, that's really exciting. And I guess you're becoming a TV star too with your YouTube channel. So I have to watch out for you because you're going to become competition to the BioTalk podcast here, Amritha. So talk a little bit about that YouTube channel. How did that idea come up? What is the channel called? And how do the listeners be able to tune into it?
Oh, it's just the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund's YouTube channel. And really, we're working on spotlighting a lot of our awardees. And I think the idea came up because I find all of this work so exciting and I'm always talking about it. And I thought that it would be really nice to have some, faces to the work that is being done. I mean, this is really important work. They're fantastic people, the people that we fund. And, it's the highlight of my day to work with them every day. And so, I just wanted to highlight some of them and, share with the audience the excitement that I have every day working in this.
Well, we need to make certain that we promote the channel because a lot of the companies you mentioned are people that we've worked with as well. And there's some of the most successful emerging entrepreneurial companies that we have within our region. And it's nice that they're connected to MSCRF. But, you mentioned some of the really premier entrepreneurs associated with those companies that you have mentioned. And I'm going to have to tune into that channel to look at some of those interviews you've done with them. I think that's fantastic. We'll help you promote that. And I would imagine Maryland might not be the only state that's doing stem cell funding for companies or clinical trials. And if you look across the country, how many other states are doing anything similar? They're probably not doing it as well as you're doing it, but how many might be doing something similar to what Maryland's doing?
Yeah, so Maryland was really visionary when stem cell funding started about 15 years ago. And at that time, we were close to about 25 million, but now we're, closer to about 8 million a year. So, we work really hard to maximize the impact we can create with that. But there are a few other states. So California has actually 5.5 billion invested in regenerative medicine. And then there are other states like Mass, New York, that fund some stem cell research directly, but also have a lot of infrastructure for cell and gene therapy as well, which we necessarily don't do at this point. Philadelphia is also rapidly growing in this space. So yeah, there are a few states. I think we're doing great in this space, but our sector has really had a record-breaking year last year with almost 20 billion in financing, and it looks like we're already ready to outperform that this year. So now would be the time to scale if we want to really keep up and lead the way there.
So I guess we need to have the assembly listen into this because it would be a good place for additional investment, right?
It would definitely be. Maryland's really, really on the map now, right? With what the biohealth capital region's been able to do with, developing vaccines. And I strongly believe that cell therapy is going to be our next glory. So it's definitely the place to invest in. And, beyond that, right? So I work really, really hard, but some of the hardest conversations I have are with patients or, mothers of children who are patients. And people who know me will tell you I constantly work with a sense of urgency. And that's because time is really of essence, right? Because this work can save lives. And if anything, this past year has really shown us how important public funding for research and manufacturing is. And we've seen what it can do. So absolutely. I mean, I may be a little biased, but I honestly think, this is the time.
Well, if you're not passionate, then who could be, really? But when you talk about other states and sort of the whole stem cell and gene therapy industry, is there a major trade association or group that helps try to bring people together nationally and around the world on this topic so you can share all of the knowledge of what other people are doing around other areas?
Yeah, there are several sort of global organizations that we participate in all the time to, get together with these folks to keep on top of industry trends, to make sure that we continue to identify and fund the right ones. And so we can bring these resources back. Yeah, there are several different organizations that work in specifically the regenerative medicine space.
Yeah, I think, do you know Maury Ruffin?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Maury created one of the regenerative medicine associations, I think, and it's based in Baltimore, isn't it?
Was this ARM, the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine? Yeah, it's based in DC. That's
in
right.
DC. Okay, great. Yeah, it's nice to have one of the leading organizations in our own backyard. So
yeah, and they're great collaborators with us.
Excellent. What would you like to see happen in the future to enhance your program and the interest in this research area? If you could wave your magic wand, what would you like to do to enhance what you're doing today, other than get more money?
Man, more money is always critical, right?
I know.
But this is something you've said a lot, and I've already said, but I'll say it again. Creating an ecosystem is really key to our success. And so we work really hard to build that community and to create that regenerative medicine ecosystem. And, we obviously don't do this alone, right? So we're all in this together. And, we work with all of our colleagues, right? Various folks at TechCo, with our legislators who support our efforts, with folks at Tech Council, Commerce, and, of course, our universities and research institutes and companies. We're all partners in this. But, we're also looking to engage more with various players in the cell therapy industry. We're looking to engage more with disease foundations. There's just so many folks we could be collaborating with and building this ecosystem even more. But honestly, resources would be the one that I would try to fix with my magic wand. And, it's because we can identify, we're doing a really good job of identifying the next best technology and supporting it. But, we always hit a bottleneck, right? We need more manufacturing. We need more workforce in the area. So, these are all things that I think there's an ongoing dialogue. And I am hopeful that Maryland will lead the way in this as well.
I always talk about it's about the zeros. If you could just add one more zero, right, to your annual budget, what a difference that would make.
That would make all the difference.
All the difference in the world. So, yeah, we'll just talk about zero budgeting then. There's a lot of young women that listen to BioTalk. And one of the things I want to talk about is that you've progressed very nicely with your career to what you're doing today in a leadership position, which is providing an extremely valuable service, running a very important organization. But it didn't happen overnight. As you mentioned in your journey, you went through many different steps. You were on 3 different continents. You went through 6 different organizations or jobs when you were in the UK, and then you come to the United States, and then you do NIH, and you're working universities. So I guess, what recommendations do you have for, anybody, but especially young women who want to pursue the STEM education career path that you have taken? And what kind of recommendations can you give to them about looking towards the future and the vision that they should have?
Yeah, I mean, I speak often to students at elementary school, undergrad, grad, and I just spoke to some undergrad and grad students in India over the weekend as well. And, quite honestly, my excitement and enthusiasm about this industry just seems to keep increasing. So I want to encourage more and more folks to get in. And I would say, find what really excites you, and, take a chance, right? So always be open to learning more, and sometimes you're uncomfortable, but, that just means you're growing, and you've got to take a chance and, find a way to make your voice heard and find folks who support you on this journey, right? So there are several of us who've done this and who are looking to help others get in the space. And like I said, it's, I know you are STEM in general, which, I think, like I said, I think I've been in this space since I was in 10th grade, right? And I think that passion, hard work is obviously something you really have to have. And I think it's really just have that drive, keep going.
Yeah, I think that cell and gene therapy, if you look at when you started, was not really a big industry, research or commercially. And if you look at where it is today, if people have an interest in getting into this area of research, it's a lot easier today than it would have been for when you were in 10th grade or when you were going through academia, because it really didn't exist at that time. So I guess one of the things that there might be is there are more mentors that potentially are available, like yourself, who have been successful. And so how does some young person find a mentor, and how do they get the moxie to ask someone for advice to mentor them? And are you willing to talk to young people to help give them mentoring advice?
Yeah, time is the only constraint, right? So, but I think that we're all willing, right? And as you said, there are much more opportunities now. And, people are exposed to all these different career paths much earlier. And there are tons of opportunities. And so I think this is something, I probably not done the best in my life, finding mentors as well. But I think it's critical. So, having people who advocate for you, who are there to advise you on different things. And, I've worked with some great people, and I think that I've almost always used them as my mentors. But there are people I look up to and reach out to. So I think that, try it, right? The worst that can happen is that, we're not able to reply because we don't have time. But, I try always to get back when I do have a chance. And, always I belong to a few different sort of women groups as well in the space too, so that it's, it's sort of more organized and we're there helping folks when we can. So, I think reach out to people and, just learn, every day.
As Nike says, just do it, right?
Just do it.
Just do it. Okay. As we're coming to a close for this edition of BioTalk with Amritha Jaishankar, who is the Executive Director, Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund, which is MSCRF, I'd be remiss to say, I think you're doing a fantastic job. And thank you everything you're doing for the state of Maryland, the companies, and also the patients within Maryland. But is there anything that we didn't discuss today that you'd like to talk sort of in an open mic way for the listeners to hear?
No, I think we covered a lot of things. I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity to share what we do and for your support of our efforts. And thank you for everything you do for the BioHealth Capital Region. And I look forward to interacting more as we build these ecosystems together.
Good. It takes a village, right? And we're just members of the village, isn't it? So someday we might be successful enough that I might get invited on your YouTube channel. So we'll see if we have a reciprocal agreement there, Amritha. Anyway, this has been very enjoyable. I've learned a lot that I didn't know about MSCRF. I'm sure our listeners did as well. So if anybody wants more information, what's the best way to contact you?
My email will be a LinkedIn. Our website is mscrf.org, which has most of the information also that I said about our funding opportunities and our awardees and our contact information as well.
Super. And we will make certain we promote this when we release this issue of the podcast, and also put it in our newsletter for people to be able to contact you. So thank you very much for, as we said, everything that you do, and for appearing on BioTalk today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis.